Hey everyone, Gary Schock here. I wanted to record this video real quick because I felt that on the backs of this article that I wrote, I felt it was kind of important to maybe amplify a couple of key points about what I wrote, because I think verbal communication is even better than written, especially if I wrote it. And I think there's really a storyline that's underneath this article that I really want to emphasize in a couple of key points. The whole reason I wrote this was in large part because I'm hearing a lot of noise in the industry for the last several years around software as a commodity, commerce as a commodity, any enterprise class software must be commodity or it's a monolith, and to go more these new architectural approaches and new paradigms. And I really want to challenge that. I couldn't sit by without giving a challenge to it and opening debate. And really, this article is really meant to basically express First of all, what is a commodity? Which is basically some mass-produced, unspecialized product, according to Merriam's Webster's dictionary. And so I started to give that some thought, and I said, well, okay, hang on, but there's a couple fundamental principles that are being missed here, especially in the commerce platform business. And I would say the word platform because platforms do matter, and they're hardly commodity. First and foremost, I really call out three major points here. First of all, when you look at things like order or cart or all these kind of fundamental features, promotions and pricing, sure, startups can say those are commodities. Enterprise class grade platforms, and more importantly, customer enterprise requirements dictate that orders and promotions and pricing are a heck of a lot more than commodity based. They got to be robust. They have to handle a whole myriad of scenarios that are thrown their way. And orders fundamentally is a great example because cart, which is really an order of a state, has a whole bunch of different behaviors to it, especially when you apply B2B, B2C, B2B buying patterns, because those cart behaviors are going to change based upon the context with which they're engaged. So if you start thinking about a microservice order and you're just doing some fundamental basics with it, you're not going to get the kind of business scale you want out of it. So what ends up happening is IT shops go with these microservice-based approach, start building order and start finding out they got to branch out of that in all different directions. And before you know it, you end up with one client telling us, that it was death by 1,000 paper cuts. They ended up with all of these different APIs that fundamentally had all kinds of different incompatible behaviors. So at the end of the day, I couldn't do something that's at significant scale, which is saying supporting complex B2B transactions that had all kinds of different contract pricing, different promotions, different types of calculations put against whatever was in the order. Those things make it incredibly complex. So therefore, by definition, platforms, commerce, and order specifically, cart, those are not commodity. You can't just buy that behavior. That's where HCL Commerce really comes in. And any enterprise-grade platform, it's built to support the more robust business scenarios, but still lets you innovate in and around it. That's the whole premise of the architecture of any good, solid enterprise-grade platform. So that's just one thing, let alone being able to make sure it performs at scale and at speed. It's one thing that, have 100 items in your cart and contract pricings all being calculated and put into those line items. That all has to be calculated. This has to be fast. So you can't add, on top of business functionality, you can't add scale into a myriad of APIs that have different behaviors and try and assemble them. You just can't add speed and scale there. That has to be built in from the ground up. And that was really my first point. The second point in this article, really, I was drawing the attention to the fact that, we're in agreement and alignment in a lot of ways with Gartner's point of view around packaged business capabilities. The notion here I'm really getting to is that coarse-grained business processes is really what's important to have. So order can't be a very finite set of behaviors or simple capability. It's got to be more robust in order to scale. You don't want to be traversing in and out of a whole bunch of different APIs to be able to build an order. You want to be able to do this in such a way that it's cohesive and streamlined. Coarse-grained APIs is what matters. And I'll be honest, the specification for this goes back to the 90s. When you look at EDI gave you a set of prescriptive messages. You follow to those. Those are standards. I'm not suggesting we should create commerce message or API standards, but the notion was those messages were very coarse-grained, were self-defining, and supported multiple types of behaviors. That's what you have to do here in an enterprise grade platform. Starting to assemble 50 API microservices and assuming they're compatible isn't going to work. It's untenable. Furthermore, unless you've got an incredible governance policy, which honestly, that's hard to put together. So my second point really builds on this idea of really on top of all of that, if you consider that, you also want to be able to create innovative business user tooling. And this is something we're heavily investing in, which is to figure out how do we actually make these business processes behave in such a way that you can automate a lot of your daily work around merchandising, pricing, and promotion management or journey orchestration. You can't do that if you're trying to assemble 8 different firms or 6 different firms' APIs to come up with something. Sure, you'll have to build your own tooling, but is that really where you want to be spending your money? That's where we think we've probably got the best landscape because we see so many clients. And that really, lends into my third point in this article. And really, this is where I start to get into kind of a fundamental point, which is at the end of the day, this marriage of our clients building their capabilities and their IP on top of a platform that handles all this stuff at scale offers clients an opportunity to rely on the vendor for support when they need it most. And I don't mean rely as a bad thing or a dependency. I mean that we're there with you. When you're trying to drive your peak volumes and you're trying to drive your peak revenues, we are there with you. We will troubleshoot the problem. Oftentimes, when we work with clients who are having any kind of an issue, most of the time we find it in some other underlying dependency in their system. May not have anything to do with our source code at all. May have something to do with configuration. But we're with them. We are in the war rooms, on the hotlines. Yes, you're paying for that, but there's value in that. When you start assembling microservices and putting together APIs from a whole bunch of different vendors, guess what? You're now the client. You are on the hook to figure it out. The vendors are just going to go, hey, that's my API is fine. I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know those other 4. They can't help you. This whole premise around commoditization is not what business people want to hear. It's maybe what IT people want to hear, but it's not necessarily what business people want to hear. It's hardly commoditied to be able to run these systems at scale when you're generating $500,000 an hour to $1 million an hour in revenue. You need to be able to have someone there that supports you, that will help you troubleshoot all of this stuff. And again, that's what you pay. Fundamentally, that's why you pay a software vendor, right? It's that perfect marriage and balance between how we can support you, how we can drive innovation, but also, 2, how you can build around that and create your own IP. That's what platforms, good ones like HCL Commerce, are meant to do. So really, I sort of just get into another kind of message here that what's driving a lot of this noise, and having been on the system integrator and large system integrator business side of the world for a long, long time, I've been in implementation for half of my career. The other half of my career has been in the software space. Is I understand this balance of wanting to build and differentiate, but leverage platform technology for the reasons I've just said. And where I really fear the industry is heading, and this is why I'm really communicating this, is to suggest that this is not a good thing to think that we can just start to assemble commodity-based vendor platform capability and sort of stitch it all together and hope it's going to work. The reason the system integrators are backing this, in my opinion, and this is my opinion, is because honestly, the build and run and manage of all that stuff, that's a bigger contract. That's a longer duration, because now you're not relying on the software vendor. What you're now doing is relying on services companies with all the knowledge of all the APIs that were built so they can run longer term services contracts. Sorry, that's just the reality of economics. I'm more focused, and our business is more focused on how can you apply the great strengths and knowledge of, let's say, our system integrators and partners to help you build innovation, while they can take advantage and use scaled, supported, robust business processes that come from the platform. And yes, a single platform. It will never be single to everything. You're always going to have an ecosystem, but the more that we can do, the better for you. And in the long run, the whole point of this whole idea, and what we say is the alternative that I'm speaking about here, this leads into how we approach things at HCL Software, and really what all software companies need to do, is to work in a more collaborative based way with our clients to understand what your business roadmaps are so we can work with you and come at you from a design point of view. What problem are you trying to solve? Everyone says AI, ML. Everyone says, I want to do merchandising associations more automated. A lot of people say a lot of different things. I think the point is we actually have an approach that says at no charge, we have senior level designers from, including myself, from lots of different digital agencies that can unpack what you're trying to do from a business point of view and express that back into the product. And that really gets into this notion of co-creation and working in partnership with our clients. You should be able to take our creation, apply it to your business needs. Conversely, develop your own IP and creation around that, have it all supported, but also support this notion of co-creation and setting up necessary squads that are tied with our development teams that can either do things from just basic prototyping to proof of concepts to minimal viable products that get into the roadmap of the product, but you get to really work with it and develop it and bring it to market, but then bring it back to us, because what we're going to end up doing is putting into a fully supported product with then an ongoing roadmap. The point is your term licenses that you're paying us for should yield you a result. Now, the way that works is by working with us in partnership, and that's where the expect more theme comes from. Any software company you work with, that should be the fundamental premise. The goal is to have as much investment put against the creation part, whereby you get the best benefit. And then you as a business maintain the decision on where that IP lives. And that's where the CX Studio really, really comes in. So that's the backdrop of this. We fundamentally believe in this perfect marriage of combining our scale and investment and couple that with what you're trying to do, use the studio as a means to capture that and to build next generation innovation that you get at a much lower cost. And why is this so important? And why do I think this idea of commodity commerce, that messaging, or worse, the microservices mock stuff that's all out there? Sure, those principles are great architecturally, but at a business level, the challenge with any of that is you're relying on an awful lot of people that you've got to retain, staff, hire, and there is an awful lot of talent shortage out there. Lord knows we see it. And the point here, when you have talent shortage, if you start getting into create mode on all these kind of fundamental capabilities and try to make them scale and work, the knowledge of how all that stuff is built goes with the people. The point is, marry up this perfect harmony of what a software platform provider gives you, coupled with your ability to create IP for yourself and or co-create IP with us so you get the most leverage for your business. That's how you drive speed, innovation at the lowest possible total cost of ownership. That's what we're here to do. That was the premise of this article. We're going to have a lot more content being developed here around how the studio works and how we do this with clients, plus some case studies. But I wanted to share this one point with you here and now because this was front and center on my mind. Anyway, all the best, and we look forward to sharing more information with you soon. Thanks.